Hey guys, welcome to Shots Up. My name's Phil, and I'll be your host today. I have some guests today, and today we're going to talk about the Lakers free agency and the moves that they made. So I just want to introduce you guys to the guests. Henry, say what's up.
Yo, yo.
Is that all you want to say? Is that your intro?
Yo, yo, Henry. That's it.
All right, and then I got Tim and JR. What's up, guys?
How's it going?
What up, Phil? Thanks for having us today. Henry's a little shy, but it's okay. He'll warm up throughout. We'll give him
Yeah,
some time.
once he gets a few beers in him.
Yeah, some of us have jobs today.
Now we are recording this on July 3rd. Some people are quote unquote working, but yeah, some aren't. Oh, dude, you're drinking. You're drinking
Yeah.
on the job.
Drinking nitro cold brew.
Oh, I thought that
High
was
brew
weird.
coffee. High brew coffee. High brew coffee.
Okay. Yeah, before we get started, I just want to wish you guys all a happy 4th. I hope you guys stay safe and enjoy that. But yeah, let's get right into it, guys. So the Lakers, they made some offseason moves. They signed a bunch of free agents. They signed Rui Hachimura back, D'Angelo Russell. They also got Austin Reeves. I think all of them were pretty decent contracts that they got them on. But in addition to that, they got some new members. They signed Taurean Prince and Gabe Vincent. Um, Henry, let's start with you. What did you think overall about the signings that they made?
I gotta say, I think Rob Pelinka, to be honest, I feel like he started off like not knowing the job, and then slowly over time, I think based on some of what worked and didn't, he's made good adjustments to I think what we need for the team. And I think priority one was definitely re-signing our core of young players we got midway last year. I think we got Reeves for I think a pretty very friendly contract. I think he could have got more, but
Yeah, I
he
think it
was
was
able
a
to
4-year,
get
$56
him.
million contract,
Yep.
which is really good because we were hearing towards the end of last season that he could be offered something like 90 something million over 4 years by another team.
Yeah.
The Lakers, we were hearing that they would match pretty much any offer that he got. But I'm actually surprised that he didn't get offered by another team. And it was pretty quiet throughout all of free agency where I didn't really hear any interest from other teams in terms of actually offering him anything. Um, Tim or JR, why do you guys think that was?
I think honestly, within this market, the first day of free agency, I think a lot of the big names definitely went off the board. So I think to be honest, the big thing for me with the Lakers moves this offseason, which I think the Lakers haven't had in a long time, is consistency. Right, Phil? I think for the first time in a very long time, we actually try to keep the core.
Mhm.
Right. And I think they're actually trying to run it back with what they saw from the second half of the season, right? Obviously, when we made the Westbrook trade for D'Angelo Russell, Vanderbilt, Malik Beasley, obviously, 2 out of the 3 are no longer on the team. But I think the consistency that they saw from when they made that push into the playoffs and obviously reaching to the Western Conference Finals, they believe that they could go beyond the Western Conference Finals and possibly to the finals with the core group that they got. So they re-signed the major players that, Rui Hachimura, Austin Reeves, which I think were 2 big pieces, especially in the playoffs. Your question about Austin Reeves and the potential of other teams really, a lot of rumors about possibly getting $100 million contract. But yeah, it was surprising to me that, a lot more teams were in on him. Maybe it was kind of spooked them out with, the Lakers coming out in front of it saying, whoever offers him, we're going to match no matter what. So why bother? Right. So maybe that might have potentially spooked other teams to look in another direction. But I think all in all, I think that was a fair value and that was a great deal for the Lakers in itself, getting the 14 million a year for, 4 years. So all in all, like Henry said, I think Rob Pelinka did a great job in this offseason. It would be interesting to see if this consistency does let them reach to the finals point. All in all, AD and LeBron has to stay healthy in order for this team to compete on the field. So yeah, I think that's kind of for me. Austin Reeves was one of the players that I did want us to see re-sign, and I'm glad that kind of came together for us.
Yeah, honestly though, I go back to this because teams that had cap space, they could have easily offered him a deal, right? Even if they weren't planning on re-signing him, or even if they weren't planning on actually getting him, just to force the Lakers to actually pay more for him, right? We've seen that in the past for other teams where they've signed guys to offer sheets. Like the Pacers last year signed
Yeah, DeAndre
DeAndre
Ayton.
Ayton to an offer sheet, right? And the Suns were forced to match that. And so now they're in a bind where obviously they got KD and Bradley Beal, and they're going to have a shit ton of tax over the next few years that they're going to have to pay. But they also got a new owner, and he seems like he's willing to pay that. But that's beside the point. I'm just really surprised. Even now, you have the Spurs who have still a lot of cap space, and they have a young group that they're trying to groom there. And it kind of seems like Austin Reeves would have fit perfectly into that young core of guys into that three position because they have like Keldon Johnson who plays the two. Well, there's also Devin Vassell, but I honestly think that they're gonna get rid of Keldon Johnson at some point and keep Vassell. And then they also have Wemby, right? And so I would have expected somebody like them or like a Rockets to kind of come and offer something. But they didn't. So that turned out to be great, I think, for the Lakers. That's great value to me in terms of what he got. Um,
I think it's also that, like, if you really look at it, like Reeves really blew up, like probably after the All-Star break, like started actually figuring out his role and how he fits alongside like LeBron and AD.
mhm.
So for teams to look at that and I think assess like, is that just maybe just like, him working in that system specifically designed for AD and LeBron, or it's like if you put him into an all-star like level type role in another team that needs, playmaking and shooting, like is he worth that value to increase it to 100K? And I think that's probably what could have just scared some teams.
I think that's a fair point, Henry. And one question that leads me to another question, right? One of their other signings was Gabe Vincent from Miami. And so the question that I have for Gabe Vincent going into this offseason is what is his true value on the market, right? Like, is he the type of player, if he goes to another system and team, can he produce in the same way that he did on the Heat? And so I wasn't sure about that. I had both him and Max Strus as guys where I was really unsure of what their value was on the market. Max Strus ended up getting more than Gabe Vincent in the open market. He went to the Cavs in a sign and trade for $64 million for 4 years. Gabe Vincent got 33 for 3, which I think the Gabe Vincent signing is about fair value to me. You know, um, JR, what do you think about the Gabe Vincent signing and how he can fit into the Lakers?
Well, I think they are looking for someone who can shoot, right? I think that's one thing that the Lakers were lacking. They saw three different people bring that during the playoffs. They looked for, the first round they saw Austin Reeves, handle the shooting, and then Rory was there here and there. And then the next series, they had Lonnie Walker come off the bench and spark some shooting, and so.
Yeah, he had
I
that
think
one game
they
where he carried the Lakers, right? And to
yeah,
that win
14
against the
points in
Warriors.
like
Yeah.
10 minutes. And so I think they wanted to put more shooters. I think Gabe Vincent's that person where he's a similar shooter to like Matt Strauss, but at the same time, they want someone who can create his own shot, when LeBron needs to be on the bench and such. So I think this is a great signing for them. He also can, shoot off the dribble, but also he can spot up shoot. And so, with LeBron handling the ball, most of the time, I think that this was still a great fit for them overall.
Yeah, Max. So sorry, Gabe Vincent. I don't necessarily think he's a great on-ball creator, but because so much attention is going to be on LeBron and AD, I do think what he's good at is actually spacing the floor, right? And if guys run him off, then I think he's good in a situation where he can take a dribble in, take the mid ranger, take a few dribbles in to probe, take the step back, or like go all the way to the rim, right? He's not a great finisher, but like, yeah, he can do some things off the bounce if guys are running at him, right? And I think Reeves is kind of the same way. That's why I think that other teams may have questioned what his true value was, right? Like he's really good playing off the ball when attention is on other guys. Yes, he's gotten better, I think, this year at a little bit more creation and the pick and roll and stuff like that and playing off of that. But I think these guys are mainly off ball type of players that when they do get the ball with guys running at them, they can kind of create off of that. Right. So I do think it was a good signing. Um, and yeah, honestly, I want to see how that works out. Now, the next
Like you
guy,
said, one thing, Phil,
yeah,
to add to that point, I did have reservations, like you said, with Austin Reeves, Gabe Vincent, because like you see, yeah, it's the system. They were able to thrive with, star players on their team. I kind of did look at Gabe Vincent's stats prior, and
mhm,
it didn't amount to a great year that he
right.
had. And obviously, he did struggle in the finals as well, right, with the Denver Nuggets series. So it is a question mark to see, but I think he does come into a system where obviously with star players in LeBron and AD. So similar to what Austin Reeves was able to thrive in this system, I think Gabe Vincent will also have that opportunity.
Mhm.
And so looking to see, I think obviously there's a lot of talk about, I think D'Angelo being the starter to start off the season, Gabe Vincent eventually going to take over that throne from him, depending on how D'Lo does. Hopefully he doesn't struggle as much as he did in the Denver Nuggets series. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he will mesh with our players in this system and how they can coincide with the
It,
other guys that we have on our team.
it's well, for one, you got to give that guy a break. He hurt his ankle, and I'm pretty sure wasn't fully up to speed against the Nuggets. But two, you get this guy for a lot cheaper. I think 2 million cheaper than Schroeder signed for in Toronto. He's 2 years younger, and he's playing. He's gonna insert himself into that same role that Schroeder was, like be that person that could space the floor and play tenacity defense. Like I, I would think if you're gonna get the cheaper price of someone that actually had finals experience like that, then it's worth the value you're getting from.
Yeah, but like Gabe Vincent, he doesn't catch me as like a lockdown defender or ball pressure like Schroeder was. And Miami was a team that played the most zone out of any team last season in the NBA. And so that's another question that I had, right? Like guys, it's not just for Gabe Vincent, but it's also for Max Strus. How are these guys going to operate on a team that plays more man to man instead of having these weird schemes of zones like Miami Heat did? And I think collectively that defense was better than the individual parts themselves. So I'm not necessarily sure that he's going to hold up like Dennis Schroeder did on defense. But I do think offensively, yes, like he's going to space the floor more than a Dennis Schroeder. Um, but yeah, I want to get to some other guys because we spent a lot of time there. Um, Question for you, Henry. Do you think the Lakers should have brought back D'Angelo Russell? The reason
He's
why I asked that is because he struggled heavily in the playoffs, right? So I've heard a lot of different things from other Laker fans. It's honestly most say that they shouldn't have brought him back. And they paid him a decent amount, right? $17 million a year for 2 years. At least it was a short term deal, only 2 years, right? But what do you think about re-signing D'Angelo Russell?
Look, I have my reservations about him, just the way that he played. I think in kind of that series where we got swept by the Nuggets, but I feel like as much as the signing, it's like 50-50 for me. It's like I'm glad we did bring him back because he still provides that ability to shoot well from behind the arc, create for himself, and get LeBron some rest when you put the ball in his hands. But the struggle that he had, like I feel like those are things that easy to fix for him as a shooter. Like, I feel like he just came in not mentally prepared, didn't have the schemes down in terms of like how to switch, how to communicate on defense. Like, those are all things that I think he can work off in the offseason. So as much as we did sign him for that 2 years, I think it's high risk, high reward for the amount of time that we would actually get to leverage D'Angelo. So I would say it's not great from a fan standpoint, but in terms of like from a team and future, success standpoint, I think it makes sense that you got to resign D'Angelo Russell.
I mean, just to chime in on that, I think it was a bad signing. I mean, when I looked at the contract, I automatically assumed that the option would be a team option and not a player option. So that way, if he's, they give him a year to, make those adjustments that Henry spoke of. And if it doesn't still work out, then they have a trade asset to get rid of him. The contract is cheap, so that's why I'm not so worried about that. Considering, they were allowing him to test the free market, and I don't think I think he knows that he wasn't going to get a better offer than what he got. He's not the player that everyone thought he would be. So I think he's in a position where he needs to prove himself, to get that large contract. And then if you look at the other teams, his style of play, I mean, he was supposed to be a starter on Minnesota, and they moved him to the bench over an age. They traded for an expensive Mike Conley to replace him on that roster.
Yeah,
I can't
like
even.
a 35-year-old Mike Conley.
Yeah, exactly. And so, I mean, I don't know what kind of offense he fits in, and it seems like he works in this, and maybe he might be the lead on that second unit, with Gabe Vincent. But I think like Henry said, I think he needs maybe he needs to mature more. I think he will learn a lot. They were only together again for what, half a season, maybe 20 to 30 games, and I think that's why they want to bring this back, because it kind of exposed them against a team who's been together for how long, how many years already. It's not a bad idea to run it back. I mean, we got pretty far. We took out teams that people didn't expect us to take out, and so what hurt is it? And as if general manager LeBron loves it, then got to keep the guy happy, right?
Yeah, and that's a good point. Good segue about LeBron, right? So the reason why I think that maybe this wasn't the best signing for D'Angelo Russell, considering that it was 2 years rather than having like a team option on the second year, is the new CBA is very restrictive for teams that are over the second apron, right? And I haven't done the math exactly, but we have to remember that LeBron James and Anthony Davis both have player options coming up next offseason. And so they're eligible for new deals, right? Which, with the salary cap going up, with these guys getting new deals, possibly, this could potentially push them towards that second apron next year, right? And we've seen that just trying to get off of contracts, even expiring contracts, to clear space, it's 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 causing teams to have to give up real assets, right? Like Dallas Mavericks during the draft, they traded Rashawn Holmes $12 million contract for 2 seasons, for 2 more years, for the 24th pick in this past year's draft. I think some other teams made some salary cap moves to just dump contracts. John Collins was another one, right? He went for basically nothing, right? But he had multiple years. But even guys that had just 1 year left on their deal, that were getting paid anywhere from $6 to $10 million a year, just to clear that cap space, took at least a second rounder to get rid of, right? So if it becomes a case where the Lakers do have to cut salary next season, and D'Lo is one of the routes that they want to take, they are going to have to give up an asset just to get him off the books. And so that's the only thing where I was wary, from a contract situation. Uh, from a play situation, I think he's a regular season floor raiser for the Lakers, where, like, if LeBron misses a game and they need more offense and ball handling, like, he can come in and do that, right? But for me, I think it's yet to be seen how he'll perform in the playoffs, because to me he had a very, very subpar playoffs this season. And I could see a situation where eventually Gabe Vincent supplants him in the starting lineup. at some point in the season.
But that's also the same, I think, formula, right? That I think what Palinka's thinking about is like we got that far with what we had. You bring in Gabe Vincent to be able to provide that starter type minutes if he struggles again. But also it's like there's no premier point guard out there, like unless we give up a lot. Like we weren't gonna get Dame. I don't want Kyle Lowry at like 40 years old. Like who else is really out there? So
Yeah, and then Fred VanVleet went for like
yeah,
$43 million a year
yeah,
to Houston, which was
yeah.
insane. But that's another pod.
It's still re-signing him, but we got all the pieces and then some. So at
Let me
that
ask
point,
this.
like,
Let me
he's
ask this.
probably the
then,
best
Henry.
option out there.
Let me ask this. Like, obviously, we lost Dennis Schroeder, Lonnie Walker, Malik Beasley. Is who we added and retained an upgrade of who we lost?
You mean like, am I happy with who we lost to who we gained?
I mean, just in terms of like overall, like even with like contracts that Dennis Schroeder with Toronto, Lonnie Walker, like, do you think the values and the contracts we got with the new additions and retaining our players was the best option versus losing? Because Dennis Schroeder had his moments, right? And I think especially on the defensive side of the ball, I think he did very well for us. But obviously like Phil said, Gabe Vincent isn't much of a defender. He's more on the offensive side of the ball. He does add more of the three-pointing element to, surrounding LeBron with shooters. But just curious to get your take on if you're happy with losing who we lost versus who we were able to retain and add.
I mean, we got lankier people, so I'm happy. I think that's what we needed at the end is people that are switchable from the 2 to the 4 spot.
So we have it on record then that if they don't pan out, that you were still happy with this and you're not going to go against your work and say, I told you so, that I told you we should have got rid of them. That was a bad signing.
Look,
right?
the only guy that's questionable is Cam Reddish. I don't know about that one, but look, I think for him and Prince, we got those at the veteran minimum, right? If I'm not mistaken.
I think Prince was maybe the room exception or the biannual or something. I think it's like $4.5 million.
Yeah, 1 year, 4.5. So I mean, Cam Reddish is the only one that stands out. Everybody else, I'm happy. It's like I feel like, it's like for Rob, it's like you got to figure out what worked and got us that ship. And I think the same makeup that we have now is that formula that got us there in that 1 year in the bubble.
So are you saying like they're a better defensive team now with the guys that they brought on? Because I think what got them there, when they won the championship was their defense, right? They were a top defensive team in the league that season. And then offense, they just had to be good enough. And obviously, like Anthony Davis was playing at a all-time great level where he was shooting very well. He hasn't shot as well over the past few seasons, but I think the identity of that team truly was defense. And so I guess I'm wondering, based off of Tim's question too, is like, what do you think the construct of this team was? Like, what do you think the identity of this team is going to be? Are they going to be built around defense, or did they kind of prioritize more of offense, or just kind of like try to meet in between with this roster construct?
I think they're focused on offense. I mean, like when you look at the signings, you already know Darvin Ham is like defense, but at the same time, there's no offense. Like I don't see an assistant coach unless DeMar Carroll, who just got signed, is supposed to help their shooting woes. But if you think about it this way, I think they also figured out like, the beginning of the season, we couldn't make one three-pointer, and then all of a sudden, that's what saved us in we beat a team who shot almost 80 points just on threes alone with just points in the paint. I think what they felt like was that may have pushed them over with adding in more shooters around the ball, but at the same time they probably also wanted length, and that's why I think that's the Prince signing, right? Like LeBron can't guard like a team with like the Suns, where they're gonna have a KD, they're gonna have Devin Booker, they're gonna have Bradley Beal by himself. So
But that's also where I think Darvin Ham comes into question now, right? Like, we've retooled this roster. He got us to the Western Conference Finals last year. I think this year will be telling on how he actually constructs that roster now.
I mean, the
Because
playoffs.
to be
the
honest,
playoffs-
I don't think he hasn't shown me enough to warrant that I think Frank Vogel's firing was justified. But
I mean,
what do I
when you
have to
look
say?
at it, he made adjustments. He outcoached Steve Kerr, in my opinion. He found things
Well,
where
you know,
it
you mean
poked at.
you mean Jordan Poole screwed it up for Steve Kerr? They traded his ass out of town. That's what happened.
Hey, I mean, whatever you want to call it, if it was to get Poole in the game, it still outcoached him. So
No, I think Darvin Ham did a great job. Look, he came into the job, and there it was rough in the beginning, right? It really was rough in the beginning, and it didn't work with Russell Westbrook there. I think in the second half of the season, it really started coming together for the Lakers, and in the playoffs, obviously, right? They made it to the Western Conference Finals. Yes, they did get swept, but they were in most of those games. Most of those games were really close, right? At least up until you know in the fourth quarter, maybe it was like a 3-4 possession game, and then the Nuggets kind of broke it up open a little bit. But they were always within striking distance throughout the whole series. So I do think that the Denver Nuggets are still the team to beat in the West, even with Phoenix's roster signings and trades. It does take time to build the cohesion, and that's why I say that Darvin Ham, I did think he did a good job because he didn't have a ton of time with these guys. There's always been turnover on this roster for the Lakers, and so yeah, I think he did a great job, honestly. So we talked about D'Angelo Russell, guys. I do want to talk about Rui Hachimura. Now he had a great playoffs. I think Rob did a great job of trading for him because essentially you only gave up second rounders to get Rui, right? And now you get a guy that's semi young that can be part of this core to try to make another championship run. And one thing that was very uncharacteristic of him compared to his past was he actually shot the ball really well in the playoffs, right? I think everyone was a little bit surprised by that. Um, what do you guys think of his re-signing, and how you see his role developing as he, in the second year with the Lakers?
I think for me, like let's go back to the start of last season. If you would have thought that he would have got this contract, it would have been like you're crazy. There's no point. There's no way he's gonna get that, right? And so
right.
I think what he's been able to do with the Lakers and revitalizing his career and showing what he can do in the playoffs. I do have some reservations, Phil, for sure, because it kind of goes back to the Austin Reeves, Gabe Vincent signings, right? Like it's still question marks because I just don't know if this was a fluke, a one-time thing, or if this is truly if he can play to that potential, right? And so I think when you look at also who's available in the market, obviously we do need a big man to play alongside AD. I don't mind it, right? I don't mind in terms of the contract. That's where I do get a little caught up in terms of the numbers and the value per se. But I think with what he's able to show in the playoffs, and I think hoping that he can continue that momentum going into this new season with more timing with Darvin Ham and the coaching staff and the players, I think it is the best value for what the Lakers could have gotten for a big man in this market this year. So with all of that said, I think still a question mark for me, but I think it was the best move for us to add a big man in this offseason.
Hey Jay, I have a question for you. For the 10-man rotation for the Lakers with these new signings, who goes in your top 10? So obviously we have LeBron and AD, right? You can add Austin Reeves there as a lock in the rotation there. The other 7. So let's start with starters. So we have those 3. I think that'll be starting. Who do you think starts alongside those 3 guys? like D'Angelo Russell at the 1, right? Is that D'Angelo Russell or is it Gabe Vincent?
I think it's Gabe Vincent. I don't think you put D'Angelo. I was actually asking Tim who the other players that we signed. I was like, wait, who's on our team again? I think Gabe Vincent starts over D'Angelo. I think D'Angelo comes off the bench. If I had to choose, like again, D'Angelo's not. We saw in the playoffs, like he got exposed for not being a spot up shooter. The others, that's a good question. How he would fight in the
I would say
rotation.
probably Vanderbilt because he did start at the 4 last season. I think you can have him back in the rotation. You know, he's a great connective piece to just play defense, rebound, kind of, you know, just do everything, right? And then, like you said, so okay, D'Lo off the bench. He's maybe your 6th man to kind of bring in some scoring off the bench. Do you think that? Do you think that Torian Prince, Jackson Hayes, and Cam Reddish are going to make it into the rotation?
I think
And
they
the reason
do.
why the reason why I ask is we also had Jalen Hood-Schifino, who they just drafted. Is he going to be somebody that gets into the rotation, or do you actually see like Cam Reddish being able to beat him out and getting maybe that 10th spot? And I guess I just want to open up this discussion to kind of the other guys we didn't talk about, which were Torian Prince, Jackson Hayes, and Cam Reddish, and if they're going to actually be rotation pieces for this team. So Henry, I know you want to talk about Jackson Hayes, so I'll kind of throw it over to you. Do you see him as somebody that's going to be, you know, that second big man off the bench?
Yeah, I think that's why I was excited to get him because when AD thrived in that championship run we had is because we had a Dwight Howard
Hmm.
to basically body up against all the bigs, like give him trouble, and also be that lob threat. You get Jackson Hayes, who I think has a similar makeup as Dwight, not as polished yet, very raw, but in terms of like his athleticism and all that, like I think you get that in Hayes. So in terms of like the rotation piece, like I think that's what Ham needs to tighten up. I do see Vanderbilt probably starting, but getting his de facto like 16 to 20 minutes a game with Rui eating up most of it. But against teams where we have to play against size, and I mean, I think you saw that the Nuggets pretty much out rebounded us almost every game. Like being able to insert Jackson Hayes in there at the 5 and have Anthony Davis slide over to that 4 spot, like it just opens up a lot more ability to body up against teams that have more bigs that, you know, I think we weren't able to do last year, given that we didn't really have a good backup center. But I do also still think we need to sign maybe one more big man. Maybe bring Dwight out of China and bring him back home, man.
Yeah. So go ahead, Jay.
I was gonna of course you turned to Dwight out of all people. Even though you wanted to trade him and get rid of him last year or 2 years ago when he was on our team. No, I mean I agree, but you have to also realize like who did Jackson Hayes replace? They waived Mo Bamba. They were hoping that Mo Bamba would help them on that end, but he was just too injury prone, right? And you know, even when he came on and played, like he didn't really produce much. I don't think he had enough time, and they probably maybe just didn't want to pay him. And you're going to someone who I think proved himself when they actually made a run on New Orleans. Like he caused us issues, and so I think you know Jackson Hayes was actually a good pickup on that. And overall, I think Cam Reddish and how Tayshaun, excuse me, I was going to call him Tayshaun Prince. I wish he was Tayshaun Prince or played like Tayshaun Prince. I think Prince, obviously, like you saw him, glimpses of him, and I think, you know, in this system, I think they'll flourish a bit more. They're probably more used as like more of a utility as far as like, you know, they spread the floor. They can still, you know, they can be a defender on lengthier guys that Henry mentioned. Like it gives them length in general. Maybe if they want to go zone, that helps them in that favor, right? And that goes back to your previous, you know, comment about, you know, doing zone. I think we'll see a lot more zone out of the Lakers as an option, you know, having someone, 2 players that played under Spoelstra who know that defense. They they went to zone in that Golden State Warrior series, and that helped disrupt that offense. And I wouldn't be surprised that was what they're gearing for. They saw what the zone did, what Miami did zone throughout the whole playoffs, and they were undersized. Like when you saw them, like losing Hero, they only had Bam as what their big men, and then the rest of them were just switching.
Right.
Or when they need to go from zone, from switching to zone, like it still worked in their favor. And so, you know, we'll see what is to come. But overall, I think that what they picked up fits their image. I think it's just a matter of just them getting playing together.
You need like a Ronnie Turioff type of player, man. I think Jaxson Hayes is that type of big man.
Now
In his career right now.
now I do want to kind of tell you guys what I'm hearing from the Pelicans fans. I think they are kind of stunned that New Orleans didn't bring him back, because he signed for the minimum for the Lakers, right? And so it's kind of like, okay, why didn't we just bring him back, right? Because I think he did show promise during his time there. To me, this is my scouting report on him. He's a very good roller because he's athletic, he's quick for a big man. He can obviously jump, he has verticality, he has decent hands, not great, but decent hands. I think defensively, he moves his feet pretty well for a big man, but I think the IQ and positioning on defense was actually quite low. He makes up for it with some of his athleticism, but I think when it comes to high level playoff basketball, I think that's where, kind of like a Mobamba, he may actually not be able to play, just because he may not be able to keep up with the game, right? I think during the regular season, he'll definitely get his opportunities to see if, he can actually get up to speed or not. I obviously don't know, like, if he will actually be able to make the rotation during the playoffs, but I will warn you guys that his defensive basketball IQ is fairly low, and I think that's why the Pelicans let him go. I think they just didn't want to pay him and keep him on, because they were just like, hey, um, we want to preserve kind of, roster spots for other young guys, because they do have to eventually pay some of their other young guys, and they also have most of their draft picks and some of the Lakers draft picks coming forward. So yeah, I just do want to throw that out there, that he's not necessarily that kind of defender that some people think he is.
You mean pay Zion Williamson?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna have to pay him, man.
He's got a lot of child support to be paying now.
Bro, if Kyrie got paid what he got paid, Zion's gonna get paid. He's like 8 years younger, he's got time to figure it out.
But
but how many games has he played, Phil?
It don't matter. It don't matter.
But I agree with you, Phil. I mean, I think he'll get a roster spot, but yeah, an amount of minutes he might play in the playoffs and beyond probably will be limited. But I do foresee the Lakers, doing that recipe like other teams are doing. And I do see LeBron and AD resting on a lot of back-to-backs this year to preserve them for our push. So
yeah, I think some of these moves also, guys, is the regular season, right? We don't need LeBron and AD to play in the regular season, let's be honest, right? And so I think some of these moves are gonna be intended for them to fill up spots when LeBron not playing back-to-back, AD, like it's fillers, right? And then let's get in a position, and let's see what it looks like, during the trade deadline. If we can make moves again to upgrade the roster, we'll do it then. I think there might be some flexibility where we can make some moves possibly. And so
they do still have some flexibility in terms of being under the luxury tax, that they are slightly under the luxury tax, even after they signed Jalen Hood-Schifino. I don't think they've officially signed him yet, but they may have $2 million before they hit the luxury tax, but then they also do still have 3 roster spots that they need to fill. Probably going to be minimum guys, but they are going to be slightly into the luxury tax after they fill out their roster. But before they hit the first apron, they'll probably have a few million, 3 or 4 million of space that they can kind of still make deals with, and not be hard capped by that that first apron.
With the 2-10 start, what worse can we do next year, right? Like we were able to come out strong. So obviously with the scheduling, it helped. We didn't face too much tough competition the second half of the season, but I think some of these signings are going to be fillers for us to just at least let's get through the regular season, get us in a position where we could compete. If there's room for upgrades during the trade deadline, definitely make those moves, and then obviously about 1 month before the playoffs start, let's get in a good groove where get our players in, especially the players that will most likely be playing a lot of minutes during the playoffs as the rotation definitely gets smaller. And yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. Obviously there's a couple moves that we could make during this offseason, so I'm curious to see what other additions, most likely maybe one other addition to the team. So interested to see what comes of it, and yeah, hopefully it all works out again for us.
I wouldn't be surprised if we even package D'Lo by midseason if he doesn't produce. I also think that's an option on the table.
No, that's what you want. let's be honest here. Anyone who does not meet Henry's criteria, you're tradable, okay?
I mean, hey man, you gotta perform or you're cut, dude. You're making more than a neurosurgeon.
And this is why you're not a GM and you're on Phil's podcast right now.
No, I completely agree with you though. Like if D'Lo doesn't perform, I mean, he is a contract that can be packaged. They do have draft picks coming up now that we're pretty far removed from them getting Anthony Davis. They do have future draft picks that they can trade out now if there was that right type of player to come along to trade for, that would want to join the Lakers. Like I don't think Dame wants to go to the Lakers, but like if another player came about that's all-star level or above, that said, hey, I want to be traded and I want to go to the Lakers, right? D'Angelo Russell could definitely be, a salary filler in that type of package. And they do have draft picks now. After I think they can do pick swaps starting in 2026 and then first round draft picks starting in 2027 every other year. So they can have something like 3 pick swaps and 2 outright first round picks that they could trade. So, we'll see what happens, guys, during the trade deadline. But I want to thank you guys for coming on. That's all the time we have today. And I want to thank our listeners. Thank you guys for dedicating your time to come listen to us about the Lakers. And I really hope that you guys all have a great 4th of July. Be safe and have fun. Thank you guys. Peace.